Before we can forge our future, we must look back and understand our past. As of 2024, the Transformers has celebrated its 40th anniversary, a proud history of cartoons, comics, and toys. However, Transformers can trace its heritage back to a time before 1984. Thanks to multiple documentaries and resources over the years, it's become fairly common knowledge that the Transformers was a collaboration between Hasbro and Takara, with Hasbro importing the Takara exclusive toy lines, Diaclone, and Micro Change. Micro Change was a continuation of the much older Microman, or Microman, which was also imported into the United States in the 1970s as Mego's Micronauts. Micro Change featured robots and battle stations that would turn into real-world objects, such as cassette players, microcassette recorders, and sometimes guns. The idea was that they were scaled with the 3 3/4 inch scale Micro Man toys. The story of Micro Change and Micro Man is worth its own video. However, we're going to explore the other side of the Transformers equation, the story of Diaclone.
Here is a reminder of what the air attack warning sounds like. This is the sound.
In the year 1980X, the world is faced with an energy crisis. As governments struggle with resource shortages and civil unrest, a ray of hope comes from the east, as Japan has begun a desperate search for a new energy source. Mining deep into the earth, Japan has discovered Freezon, a gaseous superfuel with an energy output that puts nuclear fusion to shame. A world on the edge of annihilation is saved at the last moment, and now enters a new age of peace and prosperity. With massive leaps in technological advancement and resource shortages a thing of the past, the world has now united as a federation of city-states called macro zones. These macro zones are managed by landmasters, new supercomputers aiding humanity's technological advancement, development, and goals of exploration. As mankind begins marching into a bright and prosperous future, a dark shadow begins to loom over the planet Earth. In the deep, far reaches of space, the Waruda Empire begins to ravage planets in search of Freezon. This hive of monstrous insectoid aliens destroy planets and devastate stars in the quest to satiate their hunger for energy. As the Earth is invaded by the Warudas, cities are devastated by the insects and their techno-organic mecha. To fight these monsters, the Landmaster computers and humanity have come together to form the Diaclone Corps, a task force of brave pilots and their titanic mecha. However, this invasion has become a war of attrition, as the Waruda Empire has sunk its claws into Earth, occupying cities and large territories of the planet. As combat intensifies, the Diaclone Corps can no longer be constrained to large-scale combat mecha, and instead begin developing a new task force of specialized units meant for urban combat. These units would be colloquially referred to as the car robots, as these mecha can transform from robot to vehicle and are meant for close quarters urban combat as well as search, rescue, and support. As the war rages on, the Diaclone Corps have now introduced a new unit to their forces, a unit that can act as combat, support, and field commander. This is Convoy. Released in 1982, this is Takara's Diaclone Battle Convoy, the centerpiece of the Diaclone car robots line that would eventually become Optimus Prime in the Transformers. While Optimus Prime is arguably the most iconic Transformer, we are looking at essentially the genesis point of the character and the toy line, really. And by no means is it hard to understand why Hasbro was immediately captivated by Battle Convoy. While he is somewhat simplistic by today's standards, he is striking as a bright red cab-over engine complete with trailer and drone. Visually speaking, Prime and Convoy are essentially one-to-one, with the major difference actually coming in on the trailer, with it having the Diaclone logo over the iconic blue and white stripe. There are other subtle differences we'll address later, but the majority of the changes actually come in the sticker details and sticker placements, such as the BC Keeps Diaclone Truckin' bumper sticker, which was never included on any release of Optimus Prime. The Diaclone play pattern was focused on these little guys, the Diaclone drivers, or Dianauts as they're known in the modern day. These little dudes are less than an inch tall and they have magnetic boots, a little bit like the Starcom toy line. This is why there are so many small-scale cockpits and battle stations on the 1984 and 1985 Transformers figures. This small-scale play pattern is best seen in the trailer. Now, that is the combat deck in the Transformers release. However, in Diaclone, really it is much more of a mobile command center. The Diaclone release of the trailer also has large metal panels installed into it. This is to accommodate the Dianauts' magnetic feet, and it's also seen in some of the earliest releases of the Optimus Prime toy. With the context of Diaclone added, all of the gorgeous, sculpted and stickered detail on Optimus Prime's trailer now makes sense. This was never meant to be a battle station for the Transformers or by extension the other car robots. This was meant solely for the small-scale Dianauts. The small screens, the small desks, the small consoles, all of these now have a purpose. The large armature at the rear of the combat deck can now serve its full purpose, as it can be piloted by a Dianaut and serve as a communications array, a repair station, or as a turret. For safety reasons, Hasbro modified all of the missile launching accessories on the Transformers. However, we're not dealing with US standards or safety laws. This is a fully functional and operational turret with 2 firing missiles. The articulated claw on the large armature can be used to repair or fuel the mecha and vehicles provided in the Diaclone toy line, as it's able to grip on the little fuel pump that's located near the base of the Convoy trailer. So the trailer is one fully integrated ecosystem and play pattern, with the cherry on top being the fact that Roller can seat the Dianauts and be launched out with a much more powerful spring mechanism. But our Dianauts are scrambling for the latest Waradu attack, which means Convoy needs to transform. This is where form meets function to make a very elegant transformation. Every step in engineering is there for the sole purpose of making this 70s cab-over engine into a dynamic robot. And it is one hell of a robot. There's a reason why this was chosen to become the heroic leader of the Autobots. This figure has a stoic strength to it that combines elements from the 60s super robots, the 70s trucker craze, and the 80s real robots like Gundam and Macross. While positively heroic in proportions, the details and sculpt work throughout the figure really communicate the fact that Dia Convoy is a heavy-duty utilitarian machine. This is a mecha meant for combat and rescue only. The head sculpt has fantastic details, my favorite of which being these vents on the mouth plate. While there are robots like the Countach Robo that are very sleek and elegant, Dia Convoy is a powerhouse. It looks like industrial machinery burning heavy fuel on the battlefield. Now, while the transformation is elegant, the figure does have its fair share of oddities. After all, in this era of toy engineering, it's much more of an art than a science. You do have to plug the fists in as they're separate accessories, and that was the style of the time. And the large rifle isn't held by the sculpted grip, but instead a post midway through the barrel. You can actually see a few more oddities when comparing Dia Convoy to Optimus Prime. This is actually the final use of the Optimus Prime mold in Generation 1, that being the Gold Box España reissue. The major changes really come in the accessories. The rifle and fists are slimmed down and more finely detailed. The trailer also had multiple changes like metal panels, spring-loaded missiles being neutered, the roller launcher mechanism being retooled, and the bright blue being changed to navy. Now those are just the cumulative changes that are the most notable with Optimus Prime. That is not counting every single weird little variation or mold detail that was changed in between 1982 and 1994. And that's not even counting all of the crazy weird branches of evolution that diverge from that point. That's not counting Seishi France's Redfoot Prime, Jeeg Italy's Safety Prime, IGA Mexico's Lead Poisoning Prime, and by the way, at some point, Europe quasi-legally imported these lead-painted figures in the 90s, and they had to put them in industrial paint strippers and repainted them with the cheapest red paint available. They even literally scratched out the yellow paint on the eyes and dabbed them with that same red paint and called it a day. It's some wild stuff. Diaclone's Battle Convoy is undeniably the most important Diaclone toy in the car robots range. Out of all of the figures produced in the Diaclone car robots range, Convoy is quintessentially heroic and immediately becomes the focal point when compared to all of the other figures. He's not sleek and stylish like Countach Robo, and he's not purely mechanically utilitarian like the Vanette Robo. Instead, he takes charge and becomes the immediate leader, so it's no surprise that Hasbro chose this to become the stalwart, heroic leader of the Autobots. Yet at the same time, he is so very separate from Optimus Prime. Optimus Prime has had 40 years of comics and cartoons to inform his character, whereas Convoy is still singular. It is still a carte blanche mecha piloted by daring, heroic Dianauts. Despite that, both Optimus Prime and Convoy do share the same goals, the same attributes. They're both looking to preserve peace, but are willing to fight for it. Over the past 40 years, Optimus Prime has become a character. He has developed, not just a simple leader, but a man willing to shoulder the responsibility to fight for truth, justice, and peace in the galaxy. In some respects, he's not too different than a literary character like Superman or even Odysseus. He is a character who is constantly on an evolving quest. However, Convoy is purely function. In the context of Diaclone, Battle Convoy is a stoic, stalwart monolith, protecting Japan and the rest of the world from an oncoming storm of alien invaders. It's amazing how different this figure can be interpreted depending on the surrounding context. On one hand, it is undoubtedly the face that launched 1,000 ships. It is the icon of Transformers, Optimus Prime. But by the same token, it is not Optimus Prime. It is Diaclone's Battle Convoy, a stalwart, silent sentinel, ever watchful, ever vigilant, and ever protecting the world from insurmountable odds.